There are moments that feel like bruises, not on the skin, but somewhere softer, deeper, like memory, like the way your own name sounds when someone twists it into a joke. For me, it started at the dinner table. Sunday night, my aunt's house, mint chutney, rice pilaf, lamb cooked until tender, the kind of meal that says, we're family, right before it shoves your dignity off the plate. I was 25, a UX designer by title, a master of clean layouts, white space, user empathy. I could design digital experiences that felt like home for strangers, but sitting at that long table, lined with relatives who mistook silence for respect, I felt more like a ghost than a guest. My uncle was halfway through a story about how kids these days can't handle pressure. When I said it, carefully like glassware, I've been diagnosed with anxiety, I said, not looking for applause. Just space, just a nod, just air. He blinked, then chuckled like I'd told him I was allergic to Mondays. Beta, he said, in our time we just worked. No therapy, no panic attacks. You think your Nana had time to feel anxious? With 6 mouths to feed. My aunt clicked her tongue sympathetically. Too much phone, too much overthinking. What you need is a cleanse and some prayer. The room laughed, lightly, comfortably, like I was the entertainment, the punchline. Even my cousin Ian leaned back in his chair, grinning like a TED Talk reject. Imagine letting your feelings ruin your day, he said. Just don't feel them. And just like that, my diagnosis became a dinner anecdote, filed somewhere between the samosas and the second round of chai. No one asked me how I was doing. No one wondered how many nights I'd cried into my pillow, because my heart beat like a war drum over a work email. They called it dramatic. I called it survival. But I stayed quiet, because that's what I was trained to do. Growing up in a culture where reputation was more sacred than well-being, where you could bleed internally for years, as long as your LinkedIn looked good. I smiled through dessert, said thank you for the food, went home, curled up on my couch, and stared at the ceiling like it held answers. I wanted to be angry, but I wasn't. I was tired of being the sensitive one, tired of being the cousin who overreacts, the daughter who takes things too personally, the woman who should be grateful it's not worse. They didn't know I had sat through panic attacks, with a straight back and steady hands, as I had deadlines to meet. They didn't know how I'd written product flows, with trembling fingers, because my body was in fight or flight, while my mind was negotiating user needs. They didn't see that I was functioning, because I had no choice. I wasn't fragile. I was exhausted, but even exhaustion has a rhythm, a pulse that becomes familiar, and I'd learned to move with it, quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Until that Sunday night, when something cracked. It wasn't rage. It was realization. They weren't going to change. Not my uncle with his bootstrap theology. Not my aunt with her WhatsApp remedies. Not Ian with his startup lingo and smug grin. They had already decided who I was. The anxious girl. The one who couldn't handle life. The one who was somehow both too much and not enough. But that night, as I poured myself tea at midnight, I wrote something in the Notes app on my phone. You don't owe peace to people who weaponize your pain. And I didn't know it yet, but that single sentence would become the thread that held me together months later, when everything flipped, because the same cousin who laughed at my anxiety would one day come knocking, and I would open the door, not with vengeance, but with clarity. But that's later. For now I was Laura, a quiet girl with a full inbox, a calm voice, and a mind that never let her rest. I lived in a modest apartment with big windows, worked remote, took therapy seriously, ate alone most nights, but never without purpose. They saw me as soft, but softness isn't weakness. It's just strength in a different language, and I was finally learning how to speak mine. Every family has its own operating manual. Ours didn't have printed pages, just unspoken rules. Don't embarrass us. Don't show weakness. Keep the facade polished even when the foundation is crumbling. I grew up learning that silence keeps the peace, that crying made things worse, that being difficult meant being inconvenient, and being inconvenient meant being forgettable. So I became manageable, high-achieving, low-maintenance, the good girl with straight A's, a polite smile, and no visible needs. I think that's why no one noticed when I stopped speaking in group chats, or when I started missing Sunday dinners. They just assumed I was busy, or brooding, or in one of her moods. They didn't ask if I was okay. They assumed I would be, because that's what I always was, okay enough to not cause trouble. Except trouble had already happened. Inside me, I was 25 and unraveling quietly. Anxiety wasn't new. It was old, familiar, dressed in productivity and perfectionism. But lately it had teeth. I'd wake up with my jaw clenched so tight it ached, hold my breath through entire Zoom meetings, feel my chest tighten if I got more than 2 unread notifications at once. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't poetic. It was just exhausting. So I went to therapy, sat across from a woman named Dr. Sonia Malik, who asked gentle questions and never flinched when I cried without warning. You've been surviving a system that required you to abandon yourself to be accepted, she said once, scribbling something I couldn't see. You're not broken, Lara. You've just been well trained. And for the first time in a long time I felt seen. I didn't tell my family about therapy. Didn't bother explaining the diagnosis. What was the point? They'd already dismissed my pain as privilege. Already categorized my struggle as indulgence. So I created boundaries. Not loud ones. Just consistent ones. Declined dinner invites. Muted WhatsApp. Stopped explaining myself. That was the season I learned that distance is also a form of love. The kind you give yourself when no one else will. But families like mine don't like quiet exits. They like explanations, apologies, drama they can analyze over chai. So when Ian messaged out of the blue one Tuesday afternoon, I knew something was off. Hey Lara, hope you're well. Been meaning to catch up. Any chance you're free this week? Was polite. Too polite. Like someone knocking gently before breaking in. I stared at the screen for a full minute. He hadn't texted me in over a year. Not after that dinner. Not when I stopped coming. Not when I posted about mental health on Instagram and watched relatives scroll past like it didn't exist. Now he wanted to catch up? I replied 2 days later. Busy with work. Everything okay? That was my version of a white flag. I wasn't hostile. Just cautious. He replied instantly. Yeah, just thought we could talk. I'm working on something exciting and could use your input. Exciting was Ian speak for. I need something. Still, curiosity got the better of me. We agreed to meet at a cafe near my apartment. I wore soft gray slacks and navy blouse. Neutral. Professional. Tilted. He was already seated when I arrived, sipping some oversweet iced latte that didn't match the tension on his face. We made small talk, the kind that fills space but means nothing. Then he leaned forward, voice low like we were discussing state secrets. I'm expanding the business. We're getting real traction with the new product line. But we hit a snag short-term liquidity crunch. It's temporary. We just need a bridge. I sipped my tea. Let the silence do the work. It's payroll mainly, he added. Just a bump. Around 80K. There was the ask. Dressed up in buzzwords like bridge funding and growth potential. But I wasn't an investor. I was the anxious cousin with the quiet apartment and the inconvenient feelings. Now I was a lifeline. I set my cup down carefully. Looked him in the eye. So, you need money. He hesitated then nodded. Alone. Interest-free if possible. Family helping family. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't remind him of the time he mocked my anxiety like it was a fashion choice. Tad, I smiled. Let me think about it. I stood, gathered my things. I'll be in touch. He looked surprised. He expected a no or a yes or a breakdown. But I gave him a maybe. Because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just walks away, completely calm, while the other person waits to realize what just happened. The thing about memory is, it never really asks for permission. It just shows up. Sometimes in the middle of the night. Sometimes right after a fake smile coffee with your cousin who once made you feel like you were broken. I walked home from that cafe with Ian's. It's just a bump, still echoing in my head. The words were smooth, curated. But I remembered the smirks, the jokes, the real Ian. Flashback. 2 years ago. A family dinner in Mississauga. One of those tight living rooms where opinions bounce off wallpaper and land like grenades in your gut. Everyone's gathered. My uncle's reciting real estate stats. My aunt's criticizing someone's outfit via par the compliments. Ian's bragging about launching his mindful e-commerce brand. Me. I'm the background character. Sitting in the corner with my glass of water, breathing carefully. Because that week my therapist had told me to try showing up more. To let people see me. To risk being known. So when my aunt asked how I was doing, I answered honestly. Actually, I've been working through anxiety. I'm in therapy. It's helping. Silence. Like I'd confessed to a crime. Then laughter. Then, dismissive. Told my uncle first. Anxiety. In our time we just worked harder. You young people name everything. My aunt chimed in. You don't need therapy, beta. You need dua and less screen time. Ian. He grinned. Mocked my tone. Imagine letting your feelings ruin your whole day. Just don't feel them. Simple. The room laughed with him. I laughed too. A performance. To keep the peace. But inside something fractured. Not all at once, just a quiet split. The kind you don't notice until years later when someone asks for $80,000 and you feel nothing but clarity. Back in my apartment, I opened a note on my phone titled, Things I Remember. It wasn't revenge. It was evidence. Receipts really. June 12, 2021. When I left dinner early and they joked about her moods in the family group chat. November 3, 2022. Aunt sent me a meme that said, "Anxiety is just guilt with too much free time." January 18, 2023. Ian posted a LinkedIn thread about grit over emotions and tagged me sarcastically. They thought they were being funny. They thought I was fragile. Maybe I was. But fragility isn't failure. It's the honesty of being human in a family that worships mass. The next day I called Dr. Malik. He asked for a loan. I told her. 80,000. Just like that. She didn't sound surprised. And how do you feel about that? I paused. Checked in with myself. Because I'd learned to do that now. To ask what I felt before asking what others expected. Clear, I said. Not angry. Just done pretending. She smiled through the phone. That's growth. Clarity is what happens when we stop translating ourselves to people committed to misunderstanding us. That weekend I visited my favorite bookstore. No big reason, just instinct. I walked past fiction, lingered in poetry, found a corner to sit and breathe. Bought myself a copy of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Because yes, we are. At checkout I saw my reflection in the shop window. Hair pulled back. Tote bag filled with notebooks and resilience. I didn't look like someone who cried silently through most of her 20s. But that's the thing about healing. It doesn't show up with fanfare. It's quiet, cumulative. 1,000 tiny yes to yourself. That night my phone buzzed. A message from Ian. Hey, any updates on what we discussed? Would really appreciate your support. I stared at the screen, then typed. Ian, I wish you and your team the best, but I won't be contributing financially. This isn't personal, it's clarity. I've spent years feeling small in this family. I won't fund the same dynamics now. Sent. Walked. Brief. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just healing, I was evolving. Because setting boundaries isn't an act of cruelty. It's an act of self-trust. And I was finally learning to trust myself. The anxious, overthinking, soft-spoken woman, who now knew her worth, didn't need anyone's permission to stop being someone's emotional ATM. Silence used to scare me. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that came after I'd said something real. The kind that wrapped itself around my shoulders, like cold water after warm betrayal. So when I sent that message to Ian, a simple, clear refusal, I waited for noise. Bigger. Guilt-tripping. Phone calls from extended family asking if I'd lost my values. Instead, silence, which at first felt louder than anything. I muted the family group chat, deleted the old photos from my phone, and just sat with the stillness. I was used to the chaos of emotional acrobatics. The way they twisted concern into condescension, love into obligation, my no into rebellion. But this time there was no counteroffer, no follow-up guilt bouquet, just digital quiet, like they didn't know what to do with a version of me that didn't bend. And I'll admit, a part of me panicked. Did I overreact? Was I being selfish? That's what anxiety does. It invites your old ghosts to tea and lets them rearrange your furniture. I went to the kitchen. Made chai the way Amma taught me before the silences started at home. Boil the water, crush the cardamom, watch the milk rise. Grounded me, not just the tea but the ritual, the reminder that care doesn't have to be loud to be real. I sat by the window, stared out at the skyline, Toronto in soft blue dusk, buildings like tired shoulders leaning into the night, and then, a buzz. My phone. Not Ian, not Amma, not anyone from that side. It was Armin, my coworker from the UX team. Heard you had dinner with your family. Just wanted to say you're stronger than you think. I hadn't told him everything, just enough to explain the undercurrent in my voice some days, the panic under my polished designs. I replied with a thank you. Nothing deep, but enough to let the warmth land. Support doesn't always arrive in grand speeches. Sometimes it's a well-timed text, a shared silence, someone saying, I see you, without demanding a performance. Later that week I met Zoya, my soft cousin, for coffee. She hugged me tighter than usual. I saw the group chat, she whispered. They're pretending you ghosted them, but I know. I'm proud of you. Zoya never laughed at me. She never tried to fix me either. She just stayed kind. That night she sent me a playlist called For Soft Girls with Boundaries. The first song, Phoebe Bridgers, Motion Sickness. I cried in the shower. Not out of regret, but release. Because grief isn't always about missing people. Sometimes it's mourning the version of you that kept shrinking to stay invited. By the weekend whispers had begun. Amma texted once. Beta, Ian told me you refused. Is everything alright? I stared at the message. My therapist, Dr. Malik, had warned me. When you start setting boundaries, people will treat your healing like a betrayal. I typed slowly. Amma, everything is fine. I just chose not to fund a business that mocked my mental health. 3 dots. Then they disappeared. No reply. I put my phone down. Did not spiral. This was progress. I made myself a small dinner. A bowl of dal rice and fried egg comfort food. Sat on the couch with my sketchbook. Started drawing again. Not for work. Just to feel the pencil in my hand. A doorway. A girl standing in it. 1 foot inside, 1 out. Wind pulling her forward. That's where I was. Half in, half out. Still healing but no longer hiding. The next Monday at work, my team presented a new client pitch. I led the UX walkthrough. Clear, concise, confident in a way that felt earned. Afterwards, my manager said, "You've grown, Laura." Quietly but powerfully. I smiled. That's how healing works. It builds like a bridge. Brick by brick. Boundary by boundary. And eventually you look back and realize you crossed something you thought would drown you. I used to believe that my anxiety disqualified me from success. Like I had to outperform my overthinking, outrun the panic, overdeliver just to be taken seriously. Because when your brain is wired to scan for danger, even praise feels suspicious. Good job, Laura. Is that real? Did I miss something? Did I just get lucky? Growing up, they made me believe I was fragile, too sensitive, too much. But what they never saw was how much it takes to hold yourself together when your mind is unraveling in 47 directions before breakfast. They didn't know that. I triple-checked every UX prototype, not because I doubted myself, but because I cared about the user, about the details, about getting it right. They never saw the strength in that. This week, our team launched a feature I'd quietly led for months. Streamline navigation for a health platform. Ernie, not lost on me. I had built digital calm while managing emotional chaos. My manager called it elegant work. Clean, intuitive, thoughtful. I nodded, smiled, didn't cry. But when I got home, I sat on my floor with a bowl of mango slices and let the wind wash over me. Not the title, not the paycheck. That even with anxiety, even with scars, even after being dismissed by my own blood, I was competent, capable, calm in my own way. That night, Ian posted a LinkedIn update. When family doesn't support your dreams, you build them anyway. No names, just vibes. But I knew. The post had likes. His co-founder commented, "Resilience, bro." I laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't rise from bitterness, but from the absurdity of watching someone brand their consequences as heroism. Zoya sent me a screenshot. He's rewriting history in real time. I sent back a single emoji, clown face, and then, let him. I've moved on, as I had. Mostly, healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral staircase. Some days you rise, some days you circle back, but you're always higher than before. I had a therapy session that Friday. Dr. Malik asked, "What's been the loudest voice in your head this week?" I paused. It wasn't shame, not fear, not even guilt. Calm, I said. Not the fake kind I used to perform, the real kind, the kind you earn. She nodded. You've stopped managing everyone else's comfort. Yes, that was it. I wasn't shrinking anymore. Wasn't rehearsing my words just to avoid being too much. I was letting people deal with their own discomfort and keeping my peace anyway. I texted Armin that evening. Thank you for his quiet check-ins, for not treating my silence like a burden. He replied, "You don't have to be loud to be seen. Some of us notice without needing explanations." No flirtation, no savior energy, just respect. That's the kind of love I want in my life. Not fireworks, just steady light. Later, I dug up an old notebook from university, the one where I used to scribble affirmations, just to survive a semester without breaking. On the first page, "You are not broken. You are building." And damn, I really was. On Sunday, Alma called again. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Her voice was softer than before. "Beta, I just wanted to hear how you are. Not about Ian, just you." A long pause. I breathed in and decided to believe her. Just a little. "I'm okay," I said. "Better, actually. More myself." She didn't say sorry, didn't suddenly understand anxiety, but she listened. And sometimes that's the first miracle. That night I made a small to-do list. Not for work, not for healing, just for joy. Buy fresh flowers. Try that new biryani place on Queen St. Sleep in without guilt. Text Zoya back. Wear the green kurta I used to love but felt too loud in. Healing, I'm learning, isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's tiny rebellions that say, "I'm still here, still choosing softness, still showing up." The text came on a Wednesday. "Family dinner this Sunday. Just a few of us. Hope you can come. Ayn." No emojis. No pretense. I stared at it for a long moment. Family dinner. Like nothing had happened. Like their laughter hadn't rung louder than my panic attacks. Like I hadn't spent years silencing myself so I could keep being the good one. I didn't answer right away. That I made tea. 2 cardamom pods, 1 clove oat milk. A routine I'd built for myself. Tiny rituals that made my apartment feel like safety. The steam rose like a question I hadn't answered yet. Was I ready to walk back into that room? Later that night, I mentioned it to Zoya on FaceTime. Her eyebrows lifted. Whoa. No apology first. I shook my head. Just the invite. She exhaled, then shrugged. Do what makes you feel powerful. Not what makes you seem polite. That stuck with me. Do what makes you feel powerful. By Saturday morning, I decided I'd go. Not for them. For me. Because I wasn't hiding anymore. Because their discomfort wasn't mine to carry. Because sometimes showing up is the quietest form of reclaiming your story. Sunday evening, I stood in front of my mirror. Green kurta. The one I used to love before someone joked I looked too bright. Hair open. Small earrings. Soft makeup. Not armor. Not performance. Just me. The house hadn't changed. Still smelled like incense and lemon cleaner. Still had the same plastic runners on the hallway carpet. But I had changed. And when I walked through that front door, I didn't shrink. My aunt greeted me first. Laura Beta. So nice to see you. Come in, come in. She kissed my cheek like she hadn't once said my anxiety was Western nonsense. I smiled politely. Didn't linger. Ian was in the kitchen arranging a tray of samosas like it was a business pitch. Glad you could make it, he said. Voice smooth. Practiced. Almost warm. Almost. Thanks, I replied. Come. Nothing more. Dinner was awkward at first. Chatter about weather. News. Someone's kid's admission into a private school. I listened. Observed. This used to be the setting where my voice disappeared. Now it wasn't gone, just selectively used. At one point my uncle leaned across the table. Look, healthy. Things going well. The same man who once laughed when I said I couldn't breathe through a panic attack. Now asking if I was doing well. They are, I replied. Work's good. Life's quiet. I've learned a lot about boundaries. The table went still for a second, but I didn't flinch. Later, while clearing plates, Ian pulled me aside. Actually, Laura, I wanted to talk to you. Of course. The real reason I was invited. We stepped into the hallway. Quiet. Dimly lit. Look, he began. I know you've probably heard, things have been rough. We hit a dip in sales after the holidays. I waited. Let him talk. We're in a tight spot. Just a temporary thing. Payroll's coming up and our investor pulled out last minute. He looked at me. Like I was his Hail Mary. I was hoping you could help. Just a loan. Maybe $80,000. Family rates, of course. We'd sign papers. You'd get equity when we scale. He smiled like it was a win-win. Like the past didn't matter. Like my trust wasn't currency he'd already bankrupted. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my worth. You mocked my anxiety, I said. Come, direct. You made jokes. You rolled your eyes. You made me question my sanity for years. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. And peace for me means not funding people who once made me feel broken. His face fell. I softened. Just a little. I hope your business makes it. I really do. But I won't be saving it. Not this time. Then I turned, walked back to the table and rejoined the conversation. Ian stayed behind. Zoya texted me later that night. How'd it go? I replied with one line. They heard me. And that was enough. I didn't expect the silence to feel this loud. After I left the dinner, there were no angry texts, no family group chat explosions, no dramatic follow-ups, just stillness. A few days passed, then a week, and I realized that silence was its own kind of confession. They weren't used to being told no, not by me, not with eye contact and a steady voice. They didn't know how to respond, so they didn't, and somehow that was louder than any apology. Auntie Neelam called my mom the next week. She always does when there's news. I heard about it through Zoya. She said Ian's been moody since Sunday, and your uncle hasn't said a word at breakfast in days. Zoya grinned on the call, flipping a pencil between her fingers. Honestly, it's giving consequences. I laughed, not out of cruelty, just out of relief. For once, I wasn't the one overthinking every conversation. At work, I was designing the wireframes for a meditation app. Bernie, right? A woman with anxiety building calming digital spaces for strangers. I just finished the user flow for the self-compassion module when I saw the email. Subject, quick coffee? From Neha D. Neha from product. Thoughtful. Quiet. Always sent me memes during late night sprints. Heard about Sunday. If you ever need a break from family chaos, I'm buying. I sat back in my chair. It was a small thing, but it felt soft. undemanding, the kind of support that doesn't poke your bruise, just sits beside you until the ache passes. That Friday I met her at a cafe near the office. No drama, no pity, just oat lattes and gentle sarcasm about our shared work Slack channel. I admire you, she said mid-conversation, stirring her drink, for drawing a line. People don't realize how hard it is to set a boundary when the guilt is stitched into your culture. She said it so casually, like it wasn't a revelation, but I blinked, because someone finally named it. The guilt isn't natural, it's inherited. That night I opened my old journal, pages filled with scribbled fears and panicked midnights. The page where I'd once written, "If I just stay quiet, maybe they'll love me more." I crossed it out, firmly, then wrote underneath, "If I stay quiet, I'll lose myself. I choose me now." A few days later I got a text from my younger cousin, Sarah. Sweet, observant, the only one who ever asked if I was okay during those long family dinners. Just wanted to say, "I saw what you did. I'm proud of you. Been thinking about a lot of things lately. Thank you." I stared at the screen, heart catching on those 5 words. I'm proud of you. Not you were right, not they were wrong. Just pride, just presence. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't entirely alone. I never had been. I was just looking in the wrong direction for warmth. And he messaged me a week later. Nothing long, just, "Hope you're well. Let us know if you want to join for Eid brunch." No mention of Ian, no apology, no tension. Just a branch held out, not quite an olive one, but something. A quiet attempt to act like things were normal again. But I'd learned that normal wasn't my goal anymore. Peace was. So I didn't decline. I didn't accept. I just replied, "Thank you. I'll think about it," because now they could sit with the uncertainty too. The funny thing is, when you start choosing yourself, people either grow with you, or they shrink away, and neither outcome is your burden. One night I was journaling again. Light from my desk lamp spilling onto the page. I wrote a single sentence and circled it twice. Forgiveness doesn't always need an apology first. Sometimes it just needs space. That was my answer to everything they hadn't said. The things I'd hoped they would acknowledge. The moments they skipped. The feelings they laughed off. Maybe they'd never say, "I'm sorry." Maybe they wouldn't know how. But I didn't need their words to validate my wound anymore. I had my own voice for that now. Closure. They talk about it like it's a handshake. A sit down. A tidy bow on a mess someone else created. But closure for me never came from their words. Came from what I stopped saying. Ian called again. This time not about the loan. Not directly anyway. Just a casual, "Let's catch up. Maybe clear the air." Clear the air. Like the smoke hadn't come from his own match. I said yes. Not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted to see what he'd do with the silence I left behind. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Neutral ground. The kind of place where nobody cared who you used to be. He was already seated. Sweater too neat. Smile too forced. "Laura," he said, standing halfway. "Good to see you." I nodded, sat down, waited. He ordered a lot. I asked for a black tea. He looked tired. Not in a way that made me feel pity, just recognition. I'd been there. The weight of unspoken things pressing behind the eyes. "So," he started, swirling his drink, "I guess I didn't realize how hurt you were. I mean, yeah, we joked around, but I didn't think it landed like that." As if my dignity was a feather he accidentally brushed off the table. I didn't interrupt. Let him wade through the awkward pause that followed. "Look, I was under pressure," he added. "Running the business, trying to make the family proud. I guess I didn't filter much." "You filtered just enough to keep your reputation," I said. "Come. No venom. You just didn't filter what came toward me." He blinked, not used to being answered without apology. "I didn't come here to fight," he said. "I just thought maybe we could move past it. Start fresh." There was the family version of closure. Pretend it didn't happen. Smile harder. Serve dessert. "I've already moved past it," I said. "But not the way you mean." He looked confused. So I clarified. Moving on doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean a reset. It means remembering and choosing peace anyway. "Then what do you want?" he asked, a little defensively. "Forgiveness." "I want clarity," I replied. "I want to stop explaining my pain just to make others comfortable." "So, we're not okay?" I sipped my tea. "We're not enemies, but we're not the same people anymore." He nodded, fully, uncomfortable, and I realized this was his first real consequence. Not me yelling, not slamming doors, just choosing not to go back to how it was. Sometimes the boundary is the apology. When we left, he gave me a quick hug, more reflex than affection. "You know," he said, almost wistful, "you've changed." "No," I said gently. I stopped hiding. Then I walked away. That night I sat on my balcony, lights from the city blinking like quiet Morse code. I thought about how many versions of me I'd buried just to make others feel whole. The agreeable Lara, the quiet at dinner Lara, the I promise I'm fine Lara. Gone. In their place, a woman who didn't wait for closure to heal. Sarah texted me again that night. You're kind of a legend, you know. I smiled. Typed back. Not a legend, just finally being real. Later I opened my design app just to play around. No deadlines. No feedback loops. I sketched a wireframe called Boundaries. Page 1. What does peace mean to you? My answer? Not being liked, not being understood, just being. Without flinching. People talk about inheritance like it's just money or land. But emotional legacy? That's the heavier thing. The way your mother held silence like a blade. The way your uncle used sarcasm to stitch over guilt. The way nobody ever said sorry. Only eat something when things broke. That's the real family heirloom. After the coffee with Ian, I found myself digging through an old storage bin. Tucked inside a canvas pouch were notebooks from university. One had a tear-stained corner. Another was full of over-prepared outlines, plan A through plan D in case I failed. The what? Being enough? I sat cross-legged on my floor, pages spread around me like wings. So much of my life had been built in reaction. To judgment, to doubt, to that gnawing voice. Don't be difficult. Don't be dramatic. I wasn't designing experiences back then. I was designing mass. It hit me then, how much I'd absorbed that wasn't mine. That generational voice that whispered, shame is normal. Suffering means you're strong. Don't talk about it, endure it. Even as a child, I watched adults hide their fears behind pride. My mother once said, we don't air dirty laundry in front of people. Keep your head high. What she meant was, swallow it, smile, survive in silence. But I'm not interested in surviving anymore. I want to live. Dr. Alina, my therapist, once asked, what parts of your family do you want to carry forward? It was one of the hardest questions I've ever answered, because for so long I thought my choices were, become like them or become no one at all. But healing means choosing third options. I wrote down, grit, ambition, rituals like cardamom chai on Sundays, a sense of beauty in chaos. I left behind, guilt as a tool, silence as safety, love as a transaction. That was the trade. I would honor where I came from without staying trapped in it. One afternoon I met up with Sarah at a park. She brought samosas. I brought sparkling water and honey wafers. We sat near the fountain, people watching. You know what I've realized? I said. We spend so much time trying to heal our childhoods, we forget to imagine our futures. So imagine it, she replied, biting into a samosa. What does it look like? I closed my eyes. A place where I'm not the only emotionally fluent person in the room. A life that feels like mine. A version of love that doesn't require self-erasure. She nodded. You're getting there. I can see it. And I believed her. A week later I got a package from Ian's mom, my aunt. Inside, a silk scarf and a handwritten note. I know we've been harsh. That doesn't mean we don't care. We just didn't know how to show it. She ended with, families fight, but blood is blood. I folded the note quietly. Blood is blood, but peace is a choice. And I'd finally chosen mine. That weekend I designed something for myself. Not for work. Not for clients. A personal piece. A timeline of self-trust. It wasn't beautiful in a portfolio sense. It had broken lines. Blank spaces. But it ended with a bold, glowing dot. No. This moment. This version of me. Whole. Not healed perfectly, but healing intentionally. Letting go doesn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it's simply a decision. To stop shrinking. To stop explaining. To stop inheriting wounds like they're sacred. I once believed legacy meant loyalty to pain. Now I know. Legacy can be rewritten. The last time I sat across from my uncle and aunt I was 19. It was Eid, I think. Or someone's engagement. Hard to remember. The occasions all blurred. Loud living rooms, perfume and sweat, laughter laced with pressure. Back then I barely made it through the evening. Smiled tight, nodded on cue, laughed at jokes that were really just jabs in disguise. This time I was the one who set the meeting. Neutral ground, a cafe in the East End, soft lighting, minimalist decor. The kind of place where silence doesn't feel awkward, it feels earned. I arrived 10 minutes early. They arrived 10 minutes late. Typical. My aunt started with the performance. Lar Beta, we've missed you. Your mother said you've been so busy, mashallah, doing great things. She trailed off when I didn't smile. My uncle jumped in next, straight to the pitch, as expected. We won't waste time. We're asking for help as family. Ian's company is scaling fast, but we hit a cash flow snag. It's short term. You'd be repaid within a year. I listened. Calm. No nodding. No softening. just letting their words sit there, exposed. Ian for once looked uncomfortable. He didn't meet my eyes. I took a sip of tea. I remember the last time I brought up my anxiety, I said quietly. Uncle, you said people didn't have that luxury in your day, that feelings were for the weak. He flinched. Andy, you told me to pray more, that it was probably my screen time. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. And Ian, you joked about how I let emotions ruin my day, called me fragile, repeatedly, in front of the whole table. He looked down at the table. I inhaled slowly. Here's what you didn't see. I got up every morning, heart racing, hands shaking, still showed up to work, still met deadlines, still paid my rent. I built a life, while feeling like I might shatter at any moment. They said nothing. I did it without asking anyone for a bailout. Silence. Not angry, not cruel, just done. You came here hoping for help, I continued, voice level. But I think what you really came for was access. You assumed quiet meant small, that I'd still be the girl begging to be believed. I looked each of them in the eye. But I'm not. They tried again, softer this time. Beta, we were just worried. We didn't understand. You didn't want to. I cut in gently. That's the difference. Ian's voice broke through for the first time. We thought you were being dramatic, but I see it now. I do. I nodded once. I hope your business finds a way, but I won't be funding it. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my worth, and I walked away. Outside, the cold air hit my cheeks like a baptism. My hands were steady. My chest was light. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was clarity. Later that evening I got a message. Not from them. From Sarah. Heard about the meeting. Just wanted to say, proud of you. Always was. I sent back a heart. Then I curled up with a blanket, a book, and a tea blend Ian once mocked me for buying. Chamomile, lavender, a hint of cinnamon. I sipped slowly. Let the quiet fill the room. For the first time in years I wasn't bracing for impact. I was just here. In this life I built. With boundaries like architecture. With peace I didn't have to apologize for. People say forgiveness is the final step. Maybe. Maybe not. But what I do know is this. You don't owe anyone access to the version of you they refuse to believe in. You can love people and still choose distance. You can understand their wounds and still protect your own. You can be kind and still say no. That's what healing taught me. Not how to forget, but how to live, unafraid. Healing didn't come in one grand epiphany. It came slowly. In missed calls I no longer felt guilty for not returning. In birthdays celebrated with chosen people. In apartments that felt safe instead of silent. It came in the way I grocery shopped, no longer buying food I'd end up forgetting to eat. In playlists that didn't make me cry. In mornings where I didn't dread waking up. It came in laughter. Real, unguarded laughter. Sometimes loud, sometimes whispered. It came in noticing, not just surviving. The thing about anxiety is that people think it looks dramatic. Panic, chaos. A breakdown in public, but mine was quiet. It lived in the back of my throat during meetings, in the way I over-prepared for client calls, in how I reread emails 3 times before hitting send, just to make sure I sounded normal. I've always said that being a UX designer makes sense for someone with anxiety. You're trained to anticipate discomfort. You study human behavior, preempt confusion, reduce friction. You learn to see what people might need, even when they can't articulate it. Sometimes I wonder if that's why I lasted so long in toxic environments. At work, at home, in WhatsApp groups that chewed me alive with well-meaning comments. I learned to read the room so well I forgot how to speak in it. But over time I changed the rules. I stopped designing my life for other people's comfort. I moved into an apartment with huge windows and absolutely no curtains. My mornings were filled with plants, lemon water, and silence. The kind that doesn't punish. I added a do not disturb setting to more than just my phone. I said no to second dates, to side projects, to family events that felt like emotional landmines. And I said yes to therapy, to solo road trips, to volunteering at a mental health nonprofit on weekends. I wasn't trying to prove I was okay anymore. I was just learning how to be. One afternoon my manager at work pulled me aside. Laura, she said, you've been quietly killing it. The redesign pitch. Brilliant. Have you ever thought about leading a team? I blinked. But, me? The girl who used to whisper her ideas and apologize for speaking too long? I smiled. Actually, yes. I think I'm ready. I didn't tell my family. Not out of spite, but because I no longer needed their applause to validate my growth. That's the funny thing about rising quietly. Most people don't notice until you're far above the noise. And by then you're not looking down. You're looking forward. I still talk to Sarah. She's in grad school now, studying psychology of all things. Guess the family dysfunction inspired more than just trauma, she joked once. We send each other memes, voice notes, the occasional vent. It's a soft friendship. No pressure, no performance. Just presence. I still get the occasional message from my aunt. Not asking for money now, just updates, small talk, half attempts at reconnection. Sometimes I reply, sometimes I don't. I'm not angry. Just done performing the role of the grateful daughter figure for people who didn't protect the girl I was. Last week I hosted a dinner. Nothing fancy. Just friends, a few coworkers, Sarah, even Rami, my teammate who always knows when I need a coffee break without asking. We ate on the floor, shared stories, lit a few too many candles. Someone played old Bollywood music and we danced, badly but joyfully. Halfway through the evening, someone looked around and said, "Lara, you've built something really beautiful here." And I realized they didn't mean the apartment. They meant the life. I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll take that trip to Lisbon I keep postponing. Maybe I'll finally teach a UX workshop for high school girls. Maybe I'll fall in love or maybe not. But whatever comes next, it'll be mine, fully. Not shaped by shame. Not filtered through someone else's approval. Just me, anxiety and all, living out loud. I used to flinch at the sound of my name in family gatherings. Not because they yelled it, but because of what followed. "Lara Beta, why don't you smile more? Lara, are you still dealing with your anxiety thing? Lara, you're too sensitive, learn to take a joke." Even silence wasn't safe. The kind that fell after I tried to speak and no one listened. So I grew quieter, softer, smaller, until I almost disappeared inside myself. But the thing about disappearing is, eventually you start to wonder if maybe you could reappear. On your own terms. A few months after I turned 30, I was invited to speak at a panel. Topic: Designing with Empathy. I almost said no. Public speaking used to feel like skydiving without a parachute. Heart racing, hands clammy, throat dry. But this time, something felt different. Maybe it was the way I'd survived worse. Not just the panic attacks but the rooms full of people who never saw me. Maybe it was knowing that someone in the audience might need to hear what I wish I had known years ago. So I said yes. The day of the panel, I wore a dark green blouse and my quietest confidence. The moderator introduced me. Lara Sheikh, UX designer, mental health advocate and founder of Soft Rebellion, a non-profit supporting women with anxiety in tech. Applause. But it was the nods in the crowd I noticed, the kind that say, "Me too." I told them the truth, about being underestimated, about being mocked, about building something steady while feeling like I was unraveling. Anxiety didn't ruin me, I said. It trained me to anticipate, to prepare, to survive. But healing taught me to live. Silence. Then applause again, this time louder. But I didn't need it, because I could hear my own voice and for once, it felt like enough. That night I got a text from Sarah. "Sarah, just saw a clip of your panel. You were incredible." Me, "Thank you. Means more than you know." "Sarah, you're the blueprint. Seriously. You made it out. Proud of you." I stared at that last message for a long time. You made it out. Not just physically but emotionally. Out of the shame. Out of the people-pleasing. Out of the cage I once mistook for home. My mother messaged me 2 weeks later. "Mom, your cousin forwarded your panel. I watched it. Mom, I didn't know. I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand now." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I no longer needed to explain myself. Growth isn't just setting boundaries. It's not needing anyone else to validate them. Sometimes I visit my old neighborhood, walk past the bakery that used to calm me down after anxiety spirals. I don't go in, not because I'm avoiding anything, but because that girl, the one who used to sit at the corner table crying into her tea, she made it through. She became me, and I owe her everything. They say healing isn't linear. They're right. There are still days I wake up with my chest tight, my brain loud. Still moments where my hands shake before presentations or I second-guess a text before sending it. But now I meet those moments with compassion. I breathe. I stretch. I remind myself, I've survived worse. And I'm still here. That's what healing looks like for me. Not perfection, but progress. Sometimes I wonder if my family still tells the old jokes. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But I know this much. They laughed when I said I had anxiety. Then they asked me for $80,000. And I said no. Not with rage. Not with revenge. Just with clarity. Because I no longer flinch. I fly.